What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to our Game 6 rundown of the Sixers. They played awful in Game 6 at home. And we got Matt back again. Matt, we're happy to have you back. It's been fun.
Happy to be here, Chris.
Yep. Not happy to talk about a Sixers loss, however, because they got destroyed by the Celtics after coming back from a big deficit. And then they choked the lead late in the game. They were up, and they were not able to hold on after making the comeback, and it just looked flat at the end of the fourth quarter. Matt, why don't you talk a little bit about that fourth quarter with the Sixers?
Yeah, the fourth quarter was rough, but I think if I kind of had to sum up like their struggles yesterday, and like it was 2 days ago at this point, but it was I think they had the worst offensive game that they've had all year. Like even the metrics show it. It was their worst offensive performance of the whole year. And I think if you had to boil it down to three things, it would be shooting. They simply just missed shots. Harden like really couldn't control the offense. And then the adjustments by Boston with going to Rob Williams and Al Horford, and that they were not ready for that, and they kind of struggled with it. In the fourth quarter, they got really slow with the ball. They kind of just took their time and just ran like one play. Wait till they got to like 8 seconds on the clock, and Harden wasn't really able to get them into great offense. I think at the beginning of the quarter, I kind of thought Embiid was starting to get it going. He had, I think, three mid-rangers. He did miss one, but then after he missed that one, they kind of just went away from that. But I mean, it still had Maxi. Maxi missed a wide open three. Melton missed three corner threes, which is really unlike him. And then Harden kind of threw up some junk at the end. And unfortunately for the Sixers, Tatum just got hot, and that was enough for Boston to pull away and win. So
Yeah, that fourth quarter was terrible all around for the Sixers. Nobody was. What did we have? 11 points or something like that in the whole fourth quarter. Jason Tatum
it was
alone had
yeah,
more. It was awful. Uh,
yeah.
and they were playing with no heart in that fourth quarter. You would think that trying to get back to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in about 22 years, you would think they would play with a little bit more heart for the biggest quarter of their life. But no, it was pretty flat, and you think holding a team like Boston to 95 points in the whole game is, you think you're gonna win that game because Boston's a really good offense, but it was just not meant to be. They lost almost by double digits after holding them to 95 points. And guys like Tobias Harris, they need to step. Tobias Harris needs to step up. PJ Tucker didn't have his best game, but I think he'll be okay going into Game 7. But I really want to talk about Tobias Harris because he looked really off yesterday, or in Game 6. He missed a wide open alley oop. Missed another lightly contested layup. It just really looked off, and he scored a total of 2 points the entire game after playing 42 minutes. So he was on the court almost the entire game. And a guy like Jaden Springer, who was on for 1 minute at the end of the game in crunch time, got 2 points. So it's just showing how much work Tobias Harris is doing overall. But I just don't know what's up with him right now. He's not looking good. Give me your thoughts on him.
Like Jaden Springer, right?
Yeah, Jaden Springer.
I'll give Tobias a little bit of credit because that was probably one of the best defensive games I've ever seen from him. Like he had those
Yeah,
back to
he
back
was on
steals.
defense.
He had back to back steals, I think, on Tatum and then on Brown, which I'm like, he usually when
Yeah,
Tobias like swipes for the ball, he almost always hits the arm and gets called for a foul. But he got back to back steals, just was impressive, and I think he was fighting. But sometimes Tobias just gets into these modes where like he has no control, and you saw it. I mean, I think he had three or four like wide open fast breaks. Like he missed the alley oop where like if it's too much for you, just like catch it, come down with it, and then go up and finish it. But
yeah.
he was rushing. He did that again on another layup. I think there was another one where Tatum basically just blocked it, and it didn't stand a chance. I missed a couple jumpers, and then he couldn't really get anything going. I think he was 1 for 7 overall, and yeah, in a game like that, any of those shots fall, it could be a different game. So that was pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean he did really well on the defensive end last night. We usually don't see a good defensive Tobias Harris, but we saw that last night. But the offense just lacks so much, and I wouldn't be too mad about his offense if he wasn't making a lot of questionable decisions. Like with that alley oop, he should have just like you said, come down. If it's too hard to get the alley oop, just come down with it. Maybe do a dribble, try to fake, and then put up the layup. He looked really off on the offensive game in Game 6, so hopefully we don't have that version of him on offense going into Game 7. And this Sixers team need to play their all in this Game 7. This is going to be one of the biggest matchups in the whole. If we move on, this is still going to be one of the biggest matchups. The biggest games we're gonna see. Philly Boston in Boston for Game 7. It doesn't get any scarier than this for the Sixers fans. You got to go in hoping that there's going to be a different team. I was saying that I think there's going to be 3 outcomes of this game. We're either going to get blown out by like 25, we're either going to lose by 2, or we're gonna destroy Boston. I don't think there's any in between there. That's just kind of how it sums up Philly sports as a whole, and we need to be on our A game going into Game 7. Guys like Maxey have to be there. Joel Embiid has to be on. James Harden especially has to be on if he's going to be running this offense. He can't be sluggish. If he's sluggish, the whole offense is going to become sluggish, and you're going to see a result you saw in Game 6. So give me your thoughts on how Sixers should approach basically on Game 7.
So the Boston. So I'm gonna give a case for being optimistic about winning Game 7. So the Boston big adjustment was going double bigs, Rob Williams and Al Horford. I think they outscored the Sixers by like 17 points when
Something
both
like
the
that,
bigs
yeah.
were on the court, and really stifled the defense. And I think the case for optimism is that may be a false sense of security for Boston. I
Hopefully,
think
yeah.
going into this Game 7, they're thinking, oh, we figured it out. We can play these double bigs and we can kind of own the Sixers. But the problem with that is that lineup can be kind of tricky. It can really dominate the right matchup, but if you have the wrong matchup, it can struggle. So our advantage there is that lets Embiid play on Rob Williams on the defensive end. So he doesn't have to stretch out to the 3-point line. He can stay in the paint. And you saw Embiid dominate again on defense. Like, he had Tatum completely spooked again. Tatum cannot get anything going against him. The only thing Tatum can make right now is a step back 3, which, credit to him, he can do that. He's a good enough player to do that, but he's just been struggling against Embiid to get anything going. So the key to stopping the double big lineup is like you're not gonna be able to score at the rim. They're gonna have too much length and size, so you're gonna have to hit. But that lineup is vulnerable in the mid range. It's vulnerable in the corners. So PJ Tucker, George Niang, and Melton are going to be key there to hit those threes. I think you never want to put it on your role players, but if our role players hit their threes, I think this could be a pretty comfortable win for us. If they don't, I think it's going to make things a lot harder. But ultimately, Game 7s, they come down to your stars, and I think it's going to matter. I think it's really going to depend on how does Embiid, Maxey, and Harden play compared to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And I think if that trio can all have good games for us, especially Harden, because if Harden has a good game, you just see how the rest of the offense kind of just follows him. If all 3 of those can have pretty good games, I think this ends up being a win for the Sixers.
Yeah, I do think the Sixers are going to pull it off. I'm hoping the Sixers are going to pull it off. But your big 3, you need good production out of them. Like we saw in Game 5. Game 5 is an example of almost the perfect game that the Sixers could play against a team like the Celtics. Their big 3 was doing everything they could. Their role players were doing everything they could, and they put up a win both defensively and offensively, which made a good win. You really couldn't ask more out of the Sixers on that Game 5 win. So I hope we get a version of that in Game 7 because everything's on the line right now, even for Boston. So they're gonna be playing their best guys the most minutes they can to try to inch out a win against their rival in a Game 7. It's gonna be a big one. So the Sixers and Doc Rivers has to manage this team well. He has to give Joel a good enough, like, the right amount of rest in this game. We can't have a lot of time with Joel off the court. And if Joel is having some time off the court, then Paul Reed's need to step in and fill his role. Our bench has to do their job. Like Niang, you were talking about Niang. Niang had a really good game on in Game 6, and I think if we need to see more of Niang because he can hit a bunch of threes here and there, and that's what you got to see out of your role players. They got to hit their shots. They got to do what they can to help back up the stars. But yeah, going into yeah.
Yeah, just adding on to that, I think this is a huge Doc game because
Yeah.
Boston made their adjustment game 6. So now we have the advantage. Like Boston doesn't know what our adjustment's going to be going into game 7. So we can make a good adjustment. One thing I think could be a good idea is to just go in there and start Yang in place of Tucker and just
I saw something
try
on
to get
Twitter
that
about that. Yeah.
just try to hit a couple threes early and get Boston a little bit worried about playing that double big lineup. And then if you can get those bigs off the court, you're back into the lineup that you dominated game 5, that you've really honestly since game 4, like you've dominated the Celtics outside of that double big lineup. So I think that's key. And the rotations are going to be key. And I think Doc is going to just lean on playing his guys heavy minutes, but I would say I do agree with you. I think you got to find a way to get Embiid a little bit more rest heading into that fourth quarter.
Yeah. 'Cause-
The only exception I would say is if Harden and Maxey have it going, like Embiid being tired does not affect his defense. It really only seems to affect his offense with
Yeah.
him trying to hit jumpers and trying to back people down in the post. But if Harden and Maxey have it going, they can take that offensive load off Embiid. Like I'm good with Embiid playing the last 10, 11 minutes of the fourth quarter and just have him focus on defense. Let Harden and Maxey kind of carry the offense and then have it take you home. But yeah, we can't have Embiid being tired and just getting post touches after post touch because it's just too much on him when he's trying to do all that on the defensive end of the court, especially with him still coming back from the injury.
Yeah, it seemed like the Sixers were just really. I think you said this earlier. Like they were trying to just one play each time they were going down the court. They were trying too much ISO, which I didn't like to see. I like when they were moving the ball in Game 5. Was it? Yeah, Game 5. They were moving the ball great in Game 5. I don't know why they went away from that approach because it worked really well, and it didn't seem like the Celtics were able to make that adjustment, and they didn't really make the adjustment in Game 6 when we did use the ball movement. When we came back from that deficit, we were using good ball movement. So I don't understand why they didn't just stick with that until the Celtics figured something out because they can figure out our ISO game. It's pretty simple. They usually have Joel Embiid try to run a pick, and James Harden either takes it to the net and or passes it to Joel Embiid. That's pretty easy for the Celtics to figure out what's going on, and eventually they're going to stop it. They're not going to let that go on forever. So you have to work the offense. You have to get everyone involved. Maxey's going to be a big part in that with his speed, so he has to be on his game. And even guys like Tobias Harris. I don't want to see Tobias Harris run if he's still struggling with making his layup. I don't want to see him driving too often because we can't. In a game 7 like this, you can't afford to be giving away any possession, let alone missing wide open takes or even Tobias. If he's missing wide open takes, he's not going to be able to make contested takes. So I would for Tobias Harris, I would try to start off the game not trying to take many takes to the net. Try to feed your feed your teammates, and then maybe get yourself adapted into the scoring aspect of the game. But guys, I think tomorrow is going to be the Maxey and Harden show. I think Joel Embiid's going to be there on defense. He's going to be there a little bit on offense, but I think this is Maxey and Harden's game to win. I think they're going to do it because they want to win this more than anything. I feel like this is the best team the Sixers have had in years, so Maxey and Harden need to step up. They need to be the two guards that this team needs to take us to the next level.
Yeah, they know they can beat this team because they've done it. They've done it on the road twice now this series, and they've really, I'd say probably for the majority of the past second half of the series, the Sixers have outplayed the Celtics most of the time. And you see, if we get even just a decent Harden game, these wins have been pretty steady for us. And I think we can win. We can still win if Harden doesn't have a good game. But if he comes out and he's aggressive like he was in Game 1 and Game 4, I think we're gonna kind of cruise in this one. But there's always a chance that he doesn't. Harden's had a tough history of on closeout games, and if that's the case, if Harden's kind of struggling, it's going to come down to Maxey and Embiid. And I'm not the biggest fan of that because Embiid, I think, just has to be like Embiid could do it on offense and defense, but it's I think if he starts putting in all this effort on offense, it's going to take away from his defense on the other end. And really, I think Embiid's defense has been really the key of what's kind of keeping us in these games and allowing us to win them because Boston's a really good offense, and they really haven't been able to get much going, and Embiid's the biggest reason for that.
It's the Sixers' game to lose. They got to come out. They got to be strong, and they got to finish it out. They can't start relaxing even if they're up 10. Like you saw in Game 4, they relaxed and they almost choked that game and almost went down 3-1 in the series. So they got to make sure that they're going to go in and play with some I don't know what the word would be. Play with some fight. Play with some fight. This team needs to, like Tyrese Maxey was saying, it's they're going to war right now. It's game set. It's all on the line. All the cards are on the table. They gotta do everything they can, anything they can to win this game. So before we end the rundown, let's get our final prediction for Game 7. Matt, what are your predictions that's gonna happen in this game?
I'm trying to speak it into existence, but I think Sixers pull it off. I think it's I'll go with I think Game Sevens are always pretty tight. It's not always the prettiest basketball. It can be kind of ugly at times just because everybody's nervous and intense. So I'm gonna say like 107 to 102. I think it's a really close game down the wire. I think the Sixers have a small lead kind of going into some of the late possessions, and I'm going to say that Sixers are up two with about 40 seconds left, and Celtics are trying to get one more stop, and Maxey hits a dagger three, puts them up five, and the Celtics aren't able to score again.
Yeah, I'm mostly being biased right now, but I think that the Sixers are gonna pull this game out. I think they're gonna win this Game 7. It's gonna be very close. I think that there's been too much drama throughout the past few years with these two teams that it's not gonna be a blowout either side. I think the Sixers might win by a score of like 104 to 101. I think it's going to be close. It's going to be not super high scoring. It's not going to be what we saw in game Game 1 and Game 4 where they scored it was pretty almost in the 120s for both of those games. It's going to be a low scoring our Game 6 was a really low scoring game. I was surprised about that. But I think we see another decently low-scoring game. It's going to be in the low 100s, and I think the Sixers pull it off. Hopefully they pull it off, or Sixers fans across the country are going to be upset going into Monday morning because this team has let us down too much in the second round, and it needs to end here. We need to move on. It's time to move on.
Yeah, I'm not ready for an off-season pod yet because that'll be a long off-season if they lose tomorrow.
It's going to be painful.
Yep.
But yeah, that's going to do it for the Sixers rundown right before Game 7. We got not even 24 hours before this game starts, and I'm going to be stressing out all Sunday morning, all up until 3:30, and then I'm going to be stressing out all during the game until the Sixers hopefully win by the time the buzzer in the fourth quarter goes. So make sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment of what you thought about Game 6 and what you think's going to happen with Game 7. Comment your score predictions or player predictions or anything like that in the comments. And stay tuned for our next rundown, which is probably going to be, hopefully, if the Sixers win, it's going to be tomorrow night. It's going to be tomorrow night right after the game. But if they lose, yeah, it might be a day or two and for time to recover. But that's going to do it, and I'll see you guys. Matt, thanks for coming on again. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you,
Chris. We're banging these out now. They're going to be consistent.
Yep, I like them.
Yep. And yeah, it's going to do it for us, and we'll see you in the next rundown.